What do you do if you can't find a finish that actually matches what you're trying to match on your boat? Well, you create it using a little bit of ingenuity and some good tools. Hi, I'm Nika Waters and welcome to the Boat Galley Podcast. Today I'm sharing our experience in creating our own version of tongue and groove or V-notch finish for our boat. This episode of the Boat Galley Podcast is sponsored by Infinity, the most trusted name in woven vinyl flooring in the marine industry. Since 2008, Infinity has offered boat owners premier flooring options proven to withstand even the most demanding environments. Each of their products is equipped with UV stable fade resistance and antimicrobial technology, giving them both durability and style that can't be matched. Thinking about kicking carpet to the curb? Make the switch to Infinity and see the difference true luxury makes. Visit infinitylwv.com and use the coupon code BG20, that's BG20, for 10% off any area rug. Limit 1 per customer. Calypso's an old boat, and for many of us, the idea of buying an older boat serves a number of different purposes. First of all, you can find incredible craftsmanship that's available with older boats that just doesn't exist the same way today. You can get a boat that fits your budget perhaps a little better than if you were trying to buy a new one. And still another reason to buy an older boat is, quite simply, let's keep the old ones out of landfills. There's a lot of win-win-win that goes on with buying an older boat. That said, there definitely are some challenges, and one of those can come when you're trying to do an interior refit, or really any kind of a refit, and some of the stuff that's there that you'd like to match, you just can't find. The interior of Calypso is very much that way. We would like to try to match the beautiful looking V-notch, which is a little bit like tongue and groove, but instead of there being a bubble like on beadboard, it just slots into the board next to it. When our boat was finished off, not by the yard because the yard wasn't doing interiors when our boat was finished, the people who did it actually did that tongue and groove, that V-notch, by fitting individual cedar strips together. When the yard started finishing interiors, I actually am not sure if that was part of the design initially, but they mimicked that same look by doing a fiberglass finish that had that notch into it. We have been unable to source any commercially available option for replicating this tongue and groove. And it would be really easy just to say, fine, don't do it. But one of the reasons that we love our boat is we love the aesthetics of it. We love the external aesthetics. We think the lines are spectacular. We also really love the way she looks inside. And matching the existing finish is kind of important to us. Back when we first got the boat and we were redoing a whole bunch of stuff, we gave up looking and said, okay, beadboard is the closest thing we can get to it. But beadboard has this funny bump that goes in the middle. And I have to tell you, the funny bump also catches more junk and dirt than you can possibly imagine. We're not fans. And if you are, then great. Enjoy your beadboard. Not the sort of thing we're looking for on the boat. We can't find anything commercially available. And we're not going back with beadboard. So what do? Well, like many things, you craft it yourself. So we started. We did some ripping of individual pieces of wood, and Jeremy used the router to create a grooved look on the edge of it and butted the pieces together and painted. They look fantastic. They look absolutely wonderful. But it's pretty time consuming to rip the wood to the right thickness, to router every single edge of it, and then affix every single piece individually to the bulkhead. We actually have a fair amount of this interior work that we want to do between the chart table, the quarter berth, the engine space, and then the galley area. And we thought, what is a faster way possibly to do this? Sure, if we need to do it that way, we will. We're trying to make the boat be as exactly as how we want it this time around. But if we can save some time, we'd love to. So Jeremy had the idea of taking a piece of plywood, which we'd use to make those bulkheads anyway, and just running a groove through it with a router. So he took a piece and tried it. He thought, why not? Let's test it on a scrap piece of wood and hold it against the bulkhead to see what it's going to look like. And I gotta tell you, it works spectacularly. Here's how he did it. He measured the spaces between the existing grooves on the existing plywood so that the visual of what we're looking at is going to be as close as possible. The time-consuming part of this is laying out the measurements on the plywood, because you have to figure out where your guide is going to go, how wide the router bit is from the edge of it, and so figuring out on that piece of plywood, measuring the lines for where you're going to put the ruler or the guide, whatever you're using, so that the router has something to butt up against. You definitely need to use clamps to hold your ruler in place. And when I keep saying ruler, we used a metal ruler as the guide for the router. You definitely have to have whatever guide you're using. I'll keep saying ruler. You don't want to freehand it. Routers can go all over the place, and so you want to have something pretty specific to run it along. It does help to have a second person with vacuuming and also moving the clamps, because remember, you're going to have to move those clamps along the piece of plywood as you go. Carefully running the router is definitely important. Can I mention again, you got to have a guide. You can't freehand this. Step number 5 is you are going to install and paint, or paint and install. Order in which you do these things depends on both your preference, but also more specifically where it's going to go in. We have a number of bulkheads that are going in that need to be fiberglassed in place, and so you can't paint the spots that are going to be fiberglassed before you install it. So those will have to be painted after we install. It is a whole lot easier to do this router work when you have the piece of wood on a horizontal surface. It's not easy to do a router on a vertical surface. The other thing to think about is before you run the grooves, before you install the piece, make sure that you cut out any openings that are going to be there. So we have a number of bulkheads that have openings for storage, and we want to make sure that we cut those out. The order of this is you take the piece of plywood, you mark out where your tongue and groove is going to go, where your V-notch is going to go. You then cut out you run the router on all those lines, and then you cut out the openings, because otherwise you've got a whole lot of shorter bits to run with a router, and they're a little bit harder to keep going. The router bit that Jeremy used is a V-notch router bit set at a fairly shallow depth to mimic the groove on the existing bulkhead. But if you choose to do this kind of thing, make sure that you experiment to see which bit and at which depth it works for you. We're so excited to have a faster way to make the boat beautiful inside. I can't wait to hear about your particular tricks and tips for making things just the way you want them on your boat, because we all have them. Isn't that part of the joy of boat ownership? Thanks for listening to the Boat Galley podcast. We love hearing from our listeners. Please drop us a line. Don't forget to leave a review, and please share it with your friends. Hope you're staying safe and healthy.